line by line. And this is not exhaustive. I just ran out of, I only wanted one slide on this. But the similarities between what occurred on 9/11 and what we already know about 7/7 are embarrassing. I mean, this country knows more about bombs, car bombs, than probably any other country in the world. We had 25 years of it with the IRA. The only Irish terrorists who went to jail have been released because they were framed. We don't know the perpetrators, or the general public does not know the perpetrators of the vast majority of the IRA attacks that occurred over 25 years. Yet within 24 hours, we've got them. It's 4 lads from Leeds and Bradford. None of the family, none of their associates have the first clue about any fundamentalist tendencies. 2 of them have pregnant wives. One of them works with handicapped children. I mean, it is staggering. These guys were part of a game. I genuinely believe at this juncture they thought they were part of a game. They thought they'd been recruited. It happens all the time in the US. In the US, in the mainstream media, they advertise for people to work with the FBI and effectively play the role of the bad guys. High-risk occupation, I would guess. And that, I think, is what happened here. These guys were recruited to participate in the game. Unfortunately, they paid the price. Then we get through to the 21st. This was a crazy 3 days. And these 3 days are very, very significant to changing the memories of people, changing the consciousness of what is actually occurring here. Because the 21st was, to all intents and purposes, a complete non-event. One of the suspects, the key suspects, was a gentleman called Haroun Aswat, who was tracked down to Rome, and he subsequently turns out to be an MI6 asset. And the CIA are very, very upset because the CIA wanted to arrest this particular individual a few weeks earlier and were denied permission to do so. And the only time the British government normally denies permission for the US to speak to somebody they want to speak to is if they're a security agency asset. But what it did do is it did provide the opportunity for the official story to move away from the military-grade explosives used on 7/7 to putting the thought in everybody's minds that the explosives used in these events were made out of stuff that you can buy in Boots, from hair restorer and deodorant. I mean, it's a complete crock. And this was when they also released the information about the bombs, which changed from 9 to 12 to 15, found in the car at Luton. And these nail bombs were all made out of normal pharmaceutical products. But it had the very, very powerful effect of moving the focus away from the military-grade explosive used on 7/7. Then, of course, the following day was the fateful day here of Jean-Charles Menzies. Now, this event has some very, very significant implications. It is, to all intents and purposes, a complete comedy of errors. It is my opinion that the intention was obviously not to shoot an innocent individual. The target was an individual called Hussein Osman, who was thought to be living in the same block of flats as Jean-Charles Menzies. The surveillance team, who I would suggest are not normal policemen, I mean, it has all of the signatures of a group called 19int, which is a very, very sophisticated part of the British military. And these are the guys who did a lot of the undercover work in Ireland during the years of the Troubles. I mean, the closest they get to being recognised as a civilian policeman is wearing a baseball cap that says police on it. But they are surveillance specialists. And the individual that was responsible for the surveillance had a video camera, and he with a very powerful lens on it, And where he was positioned, everybody that was leaving the block of flats, he was videoing the individuals and then checking the video, replaying the video to determine the identity. When Jean-Charles Menzies left the apartment block, this guy, managing the surveillance, was responding to the call of nature. So he didn't actually turn the video camera on because he was trying to conserve battery power. So he radioed through that this individual had left, and he wasn't sure who it was. Now, I have seen the photographs of the two individuals, and you could argue that there is a degree of similarity, similar hairline. I mean, it is not as though necessarily that there's an obvious difference, but obviously something went awry, because instead of following this guy and stopping this guy, I mean, we subsequently know that initial reports were not totally accurate. He didn't leap the barrier. He used his Oyster card to get into the tube. He picked up one of the Metro newspapers on the way through. He didn't run down the stairs. The only time he ran, according to the eyewitnesses, was when he saw the train was at the platform, and like you do when you're on the underground, those last few steps, he just ran to make sure that he got through the doors before they closed. And the next thing, of course, all hell breaks loose. 10 bullets are pumped or are shot at him. Despite being at close range, he's hit by 7, 6 in the head, 1 in the shoulder, 3 miss. At the time, the police, in all likelihood, still believed that this is Hussein Osman. And this is why Ian Blair, the Commissioner of Metropolitan Police, initially is euphoric, because he perceives that this is a success. This vindicates, everything that they've been doing, and it also provides an opportunity to bring closure to part of the events that have occurred. But of course, the opposite is true, and it's opened a whole new bag of worms. Let's take a look at some of the press that occurred. Ian Blair, of course, is in the firing line because initially he tried to put a hold on the IPPC inquiry. And the inquiry, the terms of reference for that inquiry have not yet been released. This is also an interesting observation. I do want to come back to this. The Brazilian family, they dismissed the initial offer, which by anybody's imagination was derisory, of £15,000. Sorry, $15,000. It wasn't even pounds. It's $15,000. And it is reported, and I'm still trying to check the sources here, that the family, through their lawyers, have also rejected, or subsequently rejected, an offer of $1 million. Because the family have said this is not about money, it's about due process, and understanding what occurred on that day, and bringing who is responsible to justice. Now this is very, very interesting, and I'm going to come back to this particular issue in a second. Now the other issue is that the closed-circuit TV pictures, or the films, appear to have disappeared. Now where have we seen this before? This is exactly what occurred at the Pentagon. The FBI couldn't get around to all of the cameras within shot of the Pentagon quick enough to confiscate the films. None of those films have been released. And all the people at the Sheraton who sat down to watch the film before the FBI came have basically been gagged. They've had gag orders put on them so that they cannot disclose what they saw in those videos before they were confiscated by the FBI. The CCTV cameras on the bus were not working. Stagecoach say this is an impossibility. The Metropolitan Police actually pay the bus companies to maintain the cameras in good working order because obviously it helps them fight crime. All the same with the cameras on the tube stations, and yet on this particular day, at the moment, we are being told that there is no CCTV evidence of what occurred on the underground on that morning of 22/7. Now,